Thank you. I'm going to talk about modern Russian diplomacy and the global Balkans. My lecture has content in 3 points. It's okay, I will use it. Okay. Okay. This lecture deals with modern Russian diplomacy regarding the Balkans, and particularly Bosnia and Herzegovina. First part discusses the renewal of the ideas of the Slavenophilism, Westernization, Euro-Asianism in contemporary Russia, political and ideological premises of the modern Russian diplomacy. Eastern questions is the main reason for a Russian position and influences on the relations between Serbia and Bosnia and Herzegovina will be explained as the second part of my lecture. Events that marked the turn of the 21st century and the termination of its courses were the fall of the Berlin Wall, 9 November 1989, the dissolution of USSR, the dissolution of Yugoslavia, genocide in Srebrenica, the terrorist attack on the US 11 September 2001, and the Arab Spring 2011. One of the strategic points of the historical interests of Russia has traditionally been the Balkan. Renewal of the old ideas in Russia, restoration of Russia's relations with the West in the first half of the 20th century, Russian post-Soviet Euro-Asianism, and the post-Soviet Russian Slavenophilism. Relations with the Western. Russia has relations with the Western had been established in the first half of the 19th century. Today, Russia's relations to the Western are dominated by the spiritual and the political doctrines of the then Russian period. The foundation of the values of the West is enlightenment. Although the spirit of the enlightenment cannot be separated from the technological culture of the West, all opponents of the West, not only in Russia but also in the East, generally often criticize the West only as a technical civilization. Generally, they all claim to accept more or less technological advancement of the West, but do not accept its spiritual value. Modern Russian post-socialist Euro-Asianism has been represented by the contemporary Russian philosopher Alexander Dugin. Dugin expanded the traditional meaning of the Euro-Asianism with the ideas of the metaphysical geopolitics, the third road in the economics, and new understanding of the mission of the Russian history. In terms of Euro-Asians concept, Russia is neither a European nor Asian countries, that is both the self-sufficient entity which synthesizes values of both Europe and Asia. In terms of its geographical, geopolitical, socio-cultural, and any other aspects, Russia is the center of Euro-Asian and the continents of its own. According to the Dugin, the contemporary historical moment is the conflict between globalism and anti-globalism. The representative of the globalism is the West, led by the USA, and the representatives of the anti-globalism are the East and countries from that region. According to Dugin, humanistic globalization has been advocated by Russia, China, and Islamic countries. These countries comprise the other half of the world. Russia claims Dugin must not and should not be a Western instrument of restraint and prevention of development of three civilizations, nor shall any of them turn against it. Russia's foreign policy and geostrategic orientations and ask should be, according to Dugin, the exercise of the friendship Russia, Europe, Russia-Islamic world, Russia-China. Dugin's paradigms of exercise of friendship, opposites of the George Bush's paradigms of exercise of evil. The post-Soviet Russian Slavonophilism has a strong and long tradition. From the 18th century to the present day, the Russian spirit, whatever that means, has taken shape in the three general cultural and political directions: Western Slavonophilism and Euro-Asians. Slavonophiles are ideologies of the Russian national self-sufficiency with a deep and strong faith of the truth of the Orthodox faith and the great power of the Russia. Slavonophiles understand the technical progress of the West on the one hand, but emphasize that daily in the internal productive creativity is of its spirits on the other hand. In the philosophical and theoretical sense, it is important to note that their criticism of the West, the analysis of the situation, past and the future, among other things, that fact that they found that Western rationalism and individualism are mutual, organically linked. In diplomatic, scientific, political, and military terms of Eastern, question was raised at the time of the collapse of Ottoman Tsarism. Orthodox Slavism is a very strong spiritual and political foundation of the foreign policy of the modern Russian Federation. It is in this particular context that relationships between the Russian Federation and Balkans can be considered, particularly in relation of the stances that the Russian Federation takes toward the burning political issues in the Balkans, and also in the relation of the accession of the Western Balkans, especially Serbia, and in NATO and the other Euro-Atlantic association. The idea of Slavism in the Russian Federation was significantly strengthened during President Putin's first term of office, both in diplomatic and economic terms. The oil and the gas pipeline, which runs through the state of the Western Balkans toward Western Europe, has both financial and political importance. It is also the way of the generating income of the countries through which it passed, adding their international level significance in terms of safety issues of the region. Russian interest in Bosnia in both direct and indirect. It is direct in the way that Russian Federation finds the East Slavo-Orthodox question to be great importance as a part of the Russian interest in the Orthodox Slavism in the Balkan. Indirect in the extent relation to the interest of the Serbia people in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The Russian and Serbian have strategic relation involving mutual protection, especially but not limited to politics and diplomacy. During the breakup of the Yugoslavia and the establishment of Kosovo's independence, Russia has had significant economic and political issues and could not stand against the West in the protection of Serbian interests in Kosovo on the one hand, and on the other hand, the West was the war with terrorism. The Russian and the Serbian have strategic relations, today's major political objective. Until the declaration of the independence of the Republic of Kosovo, such as interest was Kosovo, Kosovo has not been seriously referred to as the sacred ground of Serbia for the past few years. After the modern Russia has a very important political role in the global war against terrorism, and that is why the West has a high level of tolerance toward Russia. Another reason of the West toward Russia is lies in its vast wealth of the natural energy resources, especially oil and gas. In such a constellation, the West put Bosnian issue on the thin ice. The issue is not legally frozen, but it is on ice, giving the opportunity to slide to one of another side. That is a reason why the greatest and many people interested, supported by the countries around the Bosnia, is to conserve Dayton situation and Dayton Agreement. Government of the Republic of Serbia on January 2011 entitled special law. Modern Russian has performed a kind of return to traditional value of their power in the Eurasian, Central and South Europe, Balkans, and Middle East, the geopolitical space which Zbigniew Brzezinski called Global Balkans. Second, my conclusion, Russia has been reactualized its influence in international relations in the contemporary world, especially in its region, near and far geo-environment. Special interest of Russia is setting up a barrier to access Atlantic military and political forces in the area of its country's long influences. Communist ideology of the former Soviet diplomacy has been replaced by the power of the special natural resources, oil and gas, as well as its geopolitical position in relation to the Western and East in the broadest cultural and geopolitical terms. Within the emergency of the war of the West against Islamic terrorism, Russia is at first reminder natural, but in fact, it was given a very significant military and political role. West was forced to take a tolerant approach and make concessions to Russian Federation, but not only because its role on the war between the West and Islamic terrorism, but also because of its energy deficiency. That's my several conclusions. Thank you very much for your attention.